Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order was a welcome surprise back in 2019. Firstly, it came out at a time when Star Wars fans were begging for good games. I mean, Battlefront 2 came out a couple of years before that, and that game was awful for a long time. Next, it was made by a team that had never done a third-person action game before, and to my surprise and many others, when the game came out, it was actually quite good. Yes, it had issues like some bugs, ropey animations, and I do remember the game being quite sloppily designed in some regards. So in 2023, it's time to remove them rose-tinted glasses and go back to Jedi Fallen Order to see if it holds up to this. The opening is super strong, and it gives off some serious Uncharted vibes climbing through a train wreckage. The first 30 minutes are action-packed, setting up the story and never really slowing down, which is great. And of course, all these cinematic moments are bolstered by the Star Wars soundtrack that just makes every single part so good.
Gotta keep moving.
For those that don't know, Jedi Fallen Order is a mixture of genres. So it reminds me of a Sony first-party third-person action game, but then it has elements of Metroidvania and Souls-like sprinkled in, which sounds like a good mixture on paper. I mean, most Souls games take inspiration from Metroidvania, so they should work well together. And in some cases it does, but in others, it falls flat on its face. So we'll start with Cal's movement. And during normal exploration, he feels fine, if a bit jank. There is something weird about his run animation that is up there with some of the strangest animations ever. But once you unlock all the powers, the jank only becomes worse. So you slide, wall run, double jump, and swing around the maps. And there's something off with every one of these moves. Sliding is hands down the worst, constantly flying off the platform, and then jumping at the end of a slide section is terrible. Swinging looks and feels weird. It's just not fluid. And then wall running is probably the best, but still feels like you're sometimes fighting against the controls. And then I forgot about the climbing, but that's weird again. When you jump near a climbable wall, you have to press L2 to attach, which just makes no sense. Why doesn't he just attach to the wall himself? Then we get into the combat, and playing as a Jedi will never get old. You have a stupid amount of combos and force abilities to use, which, wait for it, make you feel like a Jedi. You even get a double lightsaber, which is every kid from the late 90s to early 2000s dream. And when I can switch my brain off, it just satisfies that itch of me wanting to be a Jedi. But of course, I was analysing this game, and the combat has so much jank to it. Since the game is kind of a Souls-like game, but not fully, it's constantly straddling the line of what it wants to be, and it ends up feeling unpolished. Single humanoid enemy combat works well. You can dodge or parry attacks, break their guard, and attack when it's appropriate. But when fighting them by themselves, they're comically easy, so you can see it's trying to be a Souls game, but just doesn't fully commit. And fighting the many creatures in this game just doesn't feel as good as the humans. Their animations are way jankier, and they're just not as fun to fight. Even the larger boss-like creatures. I avoided combat with these as much as possible. Then when it comes to fighting multiple enemies, which of course is one of the hardest things to do in Souls games, how the enemies attack simply doesn't fit well. In most cases, you just get bombarded with a barrage of attacks, both range and melee, and all you do to win is spam attacks and blocks without having to use your brain much, which is perfectly highlighted by the clip I'm showing in the background. One of the biggest issues with the game is the exploration. I already said that traversal is annoying due to the janky powers, but on top of that, there is no fast travel, which makes 100%ing this game very tedious. And yeah, fast travel would have broken some narrative points, but at the very least, you could have unlocked fast travel after beating the game. And then of course, the rewards for your troubles are absolutely amazing. And if you didn't get my sarcasm, all you unlock are cosmetics. You can change your ship skin, you can change BD1 skin, you get stuff to make your lightsaber look different, and let's not forget the poncho. Yes, arguably one of the most boring pieces of armor to ever exist in a game, and they build the majority of the rewards around this. Cal can wear a blue poncho, he can wear a yellow poncho, he can wear no poncho, but it's awful. In keeping with the Souls-like energy, I really wish they had a stats screen where your ponchos would affect different stats, and then changing your lightsaber would also affect the stats. But no, it's all just cosmetic. Ultimately, I think the issues that I mentioned come down to two things. So firstly, this is Respawn's first third-person action game, so of course they're not going to get everything right. In general, there is a good fun factor there. And then secondly, the game doesn't know what it wants to be. I think when making Star Wars games, they want to make them mass appeal, and in 2019, Souls-like games weren't mass appeal. To me, it looks like they wanted to make a Souls-like game, but then there was probably some executives in their ear telling them to not fully commit to it because not that many people would buy it. And while I haven't spoken on it in this review, I think Dathomir the Whole Planet proves that if they really commit to making a Souls-like game, they could have actually made a pretty good one. But of course, this was just a trade-off of it being a Star Wars game. Now, I think if this was made in a post-Elden Ring world, then things would turn out different. Maybe Respawn would ditch having different difficulties and instead build a game on one difficulty and fully lean into the Souls-like part of it, which I would have loved. Now, it's not all bad. From the start, I was blown away by how gorgeous this game is. Somehow they managed to make a scrapper planet look great, and it only improved from there. The number of times I stood there to take in the picturesque backgrounds was staggering, and the fact that this game now runs at 60 FPS on PS5 with no frame drops and looks like this is amazing. In general, I think the characters are really strong. Cal is a good protagonist and is better than the majority of the Star Wars characters of the past 10 years. And then I love Grease. He's just like this kind of sleazy gambler guy that's actually just quite funny. But I'd have to talk about one of my favourite parts of this game, and that's BD1. Instantly, I loved him. I don't understand how the Star Wars franchise continues to create endearing droids, but BD1 is up there with BB-8, who was my favourite droid from the whole franchise. Even though he can't speak, you get so much from his little beeps and boops, and I love the back and forth between him and Cal.
You, know any jokes, BD? I don't know. Why? Classic.
And also, he made for some of the best and most heart-wrenching parts of the narrative. Now, full spoilers for this next point, but there are two parts that I want to highlight that really stood out to me. At one point, there's a flashback to Order 66 where you get to see where and when it happened and how Cal escaped. And it's the first time I had seen something like this outside of Revenge of the Sith, and it was a great moment in the story. And then the final boss and the escape from the boss is one of the coolest moments I've seen in a game in a long time. You beat Trilla and it looks like she's coming around to the light, but then the fog emerges from behind her, you hear the breathing, and then you see Darth Vader in the flesh. And I'm so glad that they refrained from you actually fighting him, because of course Cal would get absolutely destroyed. I mean, just look at how Darth Vader throws Cere away. Vader is like Mr. X slowly pursuing you, and it's so unsettling. Then we get to my favourite moment where BD1, a badass droid, comes in and does more damage to Vader than anyone else has in the game, and that's why I love him. The ending of this game was really strong, and it came at the right moment because leading up to the ending, I was kind of losing hope on the game and I wasn't as excited for Jedi Survivor, but the ending puts a nice bow on all of it and hopefully leads into a great story in Jedi Survivor. Honestly, I'm a bit surprised at how my opinion has changed. There's an undeniable fun factor in the game that kept me coming back for more, but as I went through this game, plenty of cracks started to form, and while I am still excited for Jedi Survivor, I'm less excited now. Going into Survivor, it could fix all the issues and make an absolutely phenomenal game, and I'm really hoping it doesn't, it could fall into the same trappings of the first game and be a massive disappointment. Regardless, I will be playing it and streaming it on launch, so stick around for that. My last re-review was the original Dead Island, so check that out if you want more. I really appreciate you watching. Thanks for your time. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you all on the next video. Goodbye.